welcome to Kelly's Crazy Travel Stories. What I kind of want to discuss every Sunday is a crazy travel story, maybe from you, maybe from me. I'm going to start the first one off with crazy travel stories from my past. So, stay tuned right after this. So this is Kelly from Nerdgasmic Adventures, and I'm here to tell my crazy travel stories. Yeah, emphasizing words is not always my strong suit. So I thought it would be pertinent, is that the right word? To go back to when I was young. I grew up in a family that was not rich by any stretch of the imagination. We were quite poor, and uh, and we had to take trips very infrequently. And if we were going to get any kind of awesome trip to go on, it usually was fairly close to home. Every year we would take a trip to grandma's house. We lived in Montana, and our grandparents, we had a set that lived in Seattle and a set of grandparents that lived in Portland. So we'd always go around Thanksgiving. On a rare occasion, we'd do a summer trip to Seattle. But most of my travel adventures were either at summer camp. We would go to summer camp for 3 weeks every year. Yeah, those are kind of fun. But that's not where I'm going this time. Usually hiking and camping style trips. I'm going to tell you right now, I am not a big fan of camping. And it probably comes down to the camping abuse I had as a child. Now, it's not your traditional form of abuse. This was taking you to crazy places and then acting as if it were normal kind of abuse. Not that we were doing the most insane things that you could think of. No, those were normal. Not so much. Not so much. So, when I was a sprightly 12-year-old kid, my dad and my brother Kevin dragged me on an arduous adventure into the Mission Mountains, which is in western Montana. And we were going to hike up to a place called Gray Wolf Lake and camp up there. And we were doing this with a group of about 12 other boys, and I think it might have just been one other adult male with us. And this hike, I'm sure we ascended at probably a couple thousand feet. Now, when I was 12, I'm not a big man anyways. I'm 5'8" now. I'm about 170 pounds. Then I might have been, at 12, maybe approaching 5 foot. Maybe, because I sprouted late. I don't even know if I was 5 foot. And I was probably 90 pounds. And I was given a backpack that was probably 30 to 40 pounds. Yeah, you shouldn't be carrying a third of your body weight up a hill when you're going for 5 miles. Hiking up the hill was, I mean, I was an active kid, so I had some muscle strength, but, kid strength. We hiked and hiked and hiked, and my dad had to take a lot of breaks. I think I had to take a lot of breaks. There were a bunch of teenage boys, so this was not my age group at all. My dad was in his 40s. My brother was 4 years older than me, so he's 16, 17 years old. Yeah, and so were most of the boys that were on this trip, 16 or 17 years old. And we hiked up and up and up and up, and we finally crested the ridge, about 4.5 miles in, and you could look down now to the camping site, and it was beautiful, gorgeous, lakes in the mountains. There's two of them. One was Gray Wolf Lake, surrounded by peaks, and then we had this one. I think they called it Little Whelp or something. I can't remember the name of it. And we camped there, set that up. Well, I, struggling, found, me questioning my life choices at this time, and if this was something I was going to enjoy the rest of my life. So my brother, he camped with the other guys right next to the lake and the fire, between the lake and the fire. It wasn't actually a great choice because everybody knows in the high lakes that, especially near a lake, it's going to, the temperature is going to drop, and then in the morning it's going to start warming up. There's going to be steam, and then that moisture is going to land on your campsite. And they camped not necessarily under a tarp, but kind of out in the open. I slept under a tarp. My dad says, okay, by the way, they're talking about grizzly bears. There's a lot of grizzly bears in western Montana in the mountains. And they said, this is what you do if one chases after you, all the advice you've ever heard. And as a 12-year-old boy, I think I just looked like a good meal, and there's no way I'm going to outrun a grizzly bear. But when we set up camp, I set up just my sleeping bag under a tarp. That's what my dad said was good, and I should do it. My dad, he's probably 10, 15 feet away under a tarp and in his sleeping bag. And next to him is the other man who went with us on this trip. Anyway, the boys are kind of rowdy, but they're calming down. It's dark. Everybody's getting into their sleeping bags. I'm probably 30 feet from that group of boys. But I'm so small, all I hear is noises in the woods. All I hear is every little rustle of the brush, every breeze flowing in. And it didn't take long for the older men, to get comfortable and start to drift off to sleep. And they started snoring. And it was not just any old snoring. It was chainsaw level snoring. It was a cacophony of musical notes snoring, interspersed with snorts. And that's where things went wrong for me. When we were going up the hill, I said, what does a grizzly bear sound like? And they said, oh, sounds a lot like a pig. Well, what are these two men next to me, near me? They weren't even right next to me. What are they doing? Snorting loudly, very loudly. Just all over the place, snorts. So I'm starting to wonder, are they snoring and there's a bear outside of the camp that's snorting? I don't know. I'm a 12-year-old kid. I'm not wise to this lifestyle. And so for hours, I'm, by the way, in a very small sleeping bag, bundled up like a little burrito. The bear would look at me and say, oh, ¿qué pasa? Burrito? Yes, that's what I was on this trip. A little burrito for the bears to just come up and take a nice little bite out of. Now, I wasn't very fat, so maybe they would have ignored me, moved on to the heavier dudes like my dad and his friend. But I don't know that. I think I'm the first one to go. And I'm certain that the bear is going to come from my side of the camp and by the way, I was near the trail and the other lake was not terribly far away. So I thought, well, if it's moving from that lake down to this lake, I'm the first person they come to. I don't have a weapon. I have nothing to save me. So I, being a weakling, little kid, well, 12-year-old kid, I was the kind of easy pickings that they would salivate over. So I strained my ears, desperately trying to distinguish between the snorts of the two sleeping noisemakers next to me and the mysterious third snoring beast lurking in the snorting beast lurking in the shadows. Was it my imagination? I don't know. Hours passed. I could not get to sleep. I was scared to death. I finally, in exhaustion, probably 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, I passed out. And I slept, I don't know, probably 4 hours until the sun rose. I get up. I decide, well, probably the danger's over now. Dark, it's getting light outside. And I wander around the campsite a little bit. And sure enough, around the outside of our campsite are tracks everywhere. Grizzly bear tracks. And, grizzly droppings. And nobody got eaten. But that didn't set a good stage for me and my love of camping. No, that is not what happened. That reminds me of another time, and I'll be quick about it. There was this other time we were camping when I was probably 8. And maybe I've told the story before, but I was 8 years old or so, somewhere in there. We decided to go camping up in the Yak, which is extreme northwest Montana, near the Canadian border. Desolate. Nobody lives up there. And as we were driving into that campsite, we drive by a guy that has his bag on a stick. I mean, straight out of the movies, bag on a stick. And my parents were both kind of creeped out by the guy, which, of course, I'm 8, so if they're creeped out, I'm creeped out. Anyway, he was looking for a ride the other direction, and we weren't about to give him a ride. My parents, no, they wouldn't do that. So we drive up, find this campsite, and then when we get there, now we had an old blue Chevy van, and in that Chevy van was a bed my dad made out of lumber and a mattress. And that's where my parents were going to sleep. But us 3 kids, because my youngest brother hadn't come along yet, the 3 of us, were going to sleep in our tent, and we were going to, be really close to the van, I guess. But there was this spot on the ground at the campsite that was flattened out, almost the perfect size for our tent. My parents interpreted that flat spot to be another set of campers who had set up their tent. Well, I'm nervous 8-year-old kid sleeping in a tent without my parents. I don't know, little scared. Turns out everything was fine. But we found out that the very campsite we were staying on the day before we had gotten there, they had dropped a cage where they were relocating grizzly cubs. So the day before we camped there, I think it was 2 grizzly cubs were released right on that campsite the day before we slept there. And my parents thought camping would be fun and I'd enjoy it. Yeah. I've been scarred for life. Let's just say that. All right. Kelly's crazy travel stories. I'm going to try to put one of these out on Sundays, maybe every week, maybe every other week. But keep your eyes open. And this is Kelly from Nerdgasmic Adventures. Did I say it right? And I'm saying, stay adventured.